So Black Mirror is back, season 7. That's right. Episode 1 is called Common People. We're going to talk about that right now. That interesting episode that Chris O'Dowd and Rashida Jones co-star as a husband and wife. So the beginning of the episode is very sweet, kind of sets up their relationship, their dynamics. Her is a school teacher, and he is a welder. They're kind of middle class folks that are trying to make their way, obviously, also interested in trying to make a baby. That's right, celebrate their anniversaries. They go away to this very odd place and have these weird sort of scenarios and traditions. And that's what plays out over the first half of the movie episode, where you see her working, you see him working, you see them traveling, you see all the different things that are going to kind of play out that will kind of have allusions to throughout the entire episode, everything that I talked about and more. And then she, out of the blue, has another headache. That's right. She's having these real weird rash of these kinds of things. And then basically just a lot of talk about how they're going to try to have babies and what they can afford and what they can't afford and how to make everything kind of work. And then, of course, when she goes back to school, she collapses. They don't know what to do. And then Mike is confronted and approached by this lady, and she is from this company, and it's kind of a new state-of-the-art type of thing. It's called Rivermind. Rivermind Tech has a startup where they basically, I don't know, back up her conscious from her excised brain tissue, and they sort of like store it on a server, and they basically can extend her life. And reality is we're having like medical sci-fi here. We're going to talk about they're going to have some sort of technology with computers, and it's rather interesting, to be perfectly honest. I was reminded of another show called Upload. That's right. Robbie Amell starred in this sort of Amazon show that involved him passing away, but they would upload all of his brain activity and subconscious into this sort of fantastical, almost like a heaven, and you can live out life. And then the corporate greed was really what made this show interesting, because they'd have to have money and the premium versions versus non-premium versions and different things that you can do. And that's kind of the theme that we're seeing a little crossover here, where she wakes up, she doesn't quite know what's going on, how long I've been out. And then they start trying to figure out how to get their lives put back together again. And as they do that, you start to run into a series of different moments that are tricky, like how are they going to pay for everything? Why is she sleeping all the time? They tried to travel again, and they realized that she just sort of zones out. And it turns out that they're on like the Uber cheap plan, and she can't roam, right? No roaming. Can you believe that? Like, you're going to upload your brain, they're going to keep you alive on these servers, but hey, there's roaming fees. I mean, literally, it's that on the nose. Then they sit down and basically they're told about how much more money they're going to have to pay. What's interesting too is the price points are always like exorbitantly more money, from like 300 to 500 more. So 300 to 800. And then it's like there's a third one that happens like it's $1,000 more for 3 to 8 to 18. Like, it's really these exponential steps on what they can do. And at the same time, the company is squeezing them towards these upgrades, because they're reducing some of the different elements of what life can be like if you don't upgrade. Then things get really weird when she returns to school. They're talking about her lesson, and then all of a sudden she just rips right into this really strange and eerie commercial. And she doesn't even have recollection of it, but the kids do. And it creates the first warning that we're going to have of how out of control this gets. And again, later on, we're going to have tiers that are introduced where she doesn't basically be mind controlled with these advertisements for the company, using her as the gateway for these kind of plugs. And you basically just see an episode where you see her deterioration of her health, her mental state, the effect on them trying to figure out how they're going to pay for everything. And then what happens is there's a little subplot that kind of comes through, and it's kind of like the backstory that actually kind of takes over, is how are they going to raise the money? So Mike is secretly playing and raising funds on what's called Dumb Dummies. It's like a live streaming service where people donate money to do these ridiculous, humiliating tasks. Initially, he wears a mask, and then over time, the desperation sets in. It's like more and more extreme things happen. He lies to her about what he's doing to raise the money, and then he ultimately has to take off the mask, and it starts to go sideways even more so, because then everybody knows he does it. He's humiliated at work, which creates more conflict. Without giving away every single detail, I think the important thing here is to understand the commentary that's being presented about the cost of healthcare, the quality of life, and what you would go through for a loved one, and how technology could play into all of that. I do think that one of the pitfalls of the episode is there's no sort of like thought process that anyone's going to regulate this company. There's no real timeline. So it seems like things are happening over a long span of time. She wouldn't be the only one negatively affected by these ridiculous rules and abuse of the customer base. But similar to Upload, that was kind of a premise that didn't really come into play. Like, we're just everyone's going to look aside. No one's going to notice that this is actually happening, and we're asked to be stepped in. There'd be activism or whatever, raise awareness or anything like that. So it's sort of like the best way to kind of make the conversation and the story kind of move. But in our real world, I'm not quite sure this is how things are going to play out. But corporate greed, it's a lot of on the nose medical healthcare limitations and those kinds of things that, you know, kind of drive you kind of crazy. I don't totally like the narrative and the tone's kind of all over the map, but I do like the fact that it's dark and edgy and really, to be honest, there's really not a way out. Once you're on the slippery slope, what do you do? If technology and capitalism are exploited by a company and no one's there to kind of figure out how that will affect people, yeah, it could go sideways for sure. We already see this. I mean, people were mocking things in 2010 here in the States when death panels were not really in existence, but technically, those committee boards that were being labeled that were already in existence through Medicare. So we already have that. That's at the government level. So the fact that we would see this with medical technology moving forward and how it would affect people, it seems plausible. Both performers were great. Everyone else is irrelevant. I don't think there's anything particularly super about this episode that makes it particularly, noteworthy. It's sort of middling for me, probably like 3 out of 5 stars. Don't really think it's rewatchable. Don't think it has anything particularly to put my finger on what I think AI or other technologies are coming. But I wouldn't be shocked that some sort of service like this could happen at some point. But I feel like it would be more, how I explain, like controlled. Like you would download certain elements of your being, some sort of uh, almost like a video game. This is the element you have, and that's all that's there. It would probably be through a computer, or you would download to an Android, and that's basically what you would get. Not having this, real life facade that you're going through with all these weird cell phone type analogies of like roaming and advertisements and pop ups and things like that. So that's my general gist of it. Not a horrible episode, but not a great episode. That's how season 7 starts, folks. Are you watching Black Mirror? Do you like Black Mirror? I didn't talk about all of them. I kind of fizzled out after a few. There were several that were sort of meh for me. I didn't really get into. And then I kind of lost my mojo about doing them. So I didn't even talk about some of my favorite ones that were from several seasons several years ago. But maybe we'll get around to that. We're going to go through this season a little bit first. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Pops.